When we talk about Mars, an image of a rocky planet with canyons, volcanoes, dry lake beds, and craters might come to your mind. It probably reminds you of all the red dust that covers its surface. But NASA's Perseverance rover just found something very unusual, something that looks like an Amazon courier bag. Of course, Amazon Prime doesn't deliver to Mars yet, although Jeff Bezos is ambitious about space travel. So what exactly have we discovered on Mars, and why does it seem to have alien origins? Well, we got answers for you, so stick till the end of the video to know more about this mysterious alien object on Mars. Even though mankind has not set foot on Mars yet, NASA over the years used several robotic spacecraft to learn more about the Martian surface. Back in 1965, the Mariner 4 flew past Mars and became the first NASA spacecraft to take close-up images of another planet. In 1976, Viking 1 and Viking 2 became the first NASA spacecraft to land on Mars, and both took images and collected science data from the Martian surface. Ever since then, several spacecraft have orbited Mars, and some have even landed on Mars. NASA's Spirit and Opportunity rovers found out that water once flowed on Mars when they found minerals that only form in water. But this time, NASA's Perseverance rover discovered something that might look very insignificant at first. No, not a footprint of an alien, and no, not a flag of any country, but pure litter. Yes, you heard it right. The rover's Twitter page tweeted, "My team has spotted something unexpected. It's a piece of a thermal blanket that they think may have come from my descent stage, the rocket-powered jetpack that set me down on landing day back in 2021. This means the rover discovered a landing debris stuck in a jagged rock while searching for signs of previous microbial Martian life. So even before humans set their foot on Mars, we already have evidence for human activity on the red planet. It may sound silly, but it is actually more serious than you think. Why? Well, the answer to that would be the Kessler syndrome. The team behind the Perseverance rover was actually surprised when the rover discovered a piece of thermal blanket about 2 kilometers or 1.2 miles away from where the rover originally landed on Mars. Now, for those of you who don't know what a thermal blanket is, well, these are used as insulating covers to protect crafts during atmospheric descent. The NASA scientists don't know if the piece broke off during descent and landing or whether it was there due to Martian winds. Well, what we know is that the thermal blanket actually joins the only other known human-made trash on Mars, which is a gear left behind when the rover landed during its early days on the planet. Now here comes the problem, something very serious. Several debris like boots, parachutes, and even entire vehicles are already known to be left behind from past missions. The Department of Defense's Global Space Surveillance Network currently tracks more than 27,000 pieces of space junk that is orbiting our planet. According to NASA, if something like this continues, we may very well be stranded on our own planet. The bigger challenge is the fact that most of these debris are too small to be tracked, but large enough to threaten human spaceflight or even robotic missions that exist in the near-Earth space environment. The impact of even a tiny piece of orbital debris with a spacecraft could create huge problems considering the speed at which these can travel, which is about 25,265 kilometers per hour. Objects in the lower orbit of a few 100 kilometers can return quickly as they often re-enter the atmosphere after a few years, and they'll burn up before they reach the ground. But then there are several debris or satellites that are at the higher altitudes of about 36,000 kilometers, where communications and weather satellites are often present in geostationary orbits and can continue to circle Earth for hundreds or even thousands of years. They can actually crash into each other, resulting in thousands of new pieces, which will then result in a lot of debris. Several countries, including China, India, and the USA, have used missiles to blow up their own satellites. The problem with this is that this actually creates new pieces of dangerous debris. The International Space Station is already at risk due to all the space debris. What's disturbing is the fact that we still don't have any regulations protecting space from these debris. So once humans begin to explore space more than ever before, these issues need to be addressed one way or the other. So our deep desire to explore space is now getting complicated as a result of us launching several objects from Earth, and it remains in orbit. NASA scientist Donald Kessler in 1978 stated that if there were too many space junk in orbit, it could result in a chain reaction where more and more objects will begin to collide, resulting in the creation of new space debris to a point where the Earth's orbit will become totally unstable. This is called the Kessler syndrome. Kessler syndrome is a phenomenon where the amount of junk in orbit around Earth reaches a point where it just creates more and more space debris, which then creates huge problems for satellites, astronauts, and also mission planners. Experts are already worrying about something like this happening soon, as we already have companies like SpaceX and Amazon planning to launch thousands of satellites to create a network of global satellite internet. Yes, satellite internet does have several benefits, but it can also result in a lot of space junk. A dead SpaceX Starlink satellite, for example, might leave a lot of debris, which will then cause a chain reaction causing other satellites to get destroyed as well. These satellites will then destroy a huge number of other communication satellites, which will generate more and more debris in every violent collision. So Kessler syndrome is all about describing and warning us about a cascade of orbital debris that could potentially hinder humanity's space exploration ambition and activities, which means humans might never actually end up being a multiplanetary species, especially when companies like SpaceX are looking forward to colonizing Mars very shortly. As of now, space junk might not pose a huge risk to our exploration plans, but it actually is a bigger threat to other satellites in orbit. These satellites have to deal with all of the incoming space chunks at high speeds to make sure they don't get hit or potentially damaged or destroyed. If that happens, we're talking about millions or even billions of dollars in damages. So it's kind of obvious now that wherever humans go, trash is something that follows. But for the first time, trash actually reached before humans ever did. Perseverance was sent to Mars to look out for evidence for life, and it looks like the rover did just that, the evidence for life that actually sent it there. Somehow, we humans managed to leave our trash almost everywhere, but nobody would have thought it would reach as far as Mars, and that just happened. In the end, NASA's ultimate goal was always to get human beings to explore the red planet, but it's easier said than done, because of which the space agency needs to send more robots to learn what Mars is going to be like for humans. The Perseverance rover was ultimately designed to study rock records as they reveal more about the geological processes that created and modified the Martian surface over time. Each layer of rock on the Martian surface contains a record of the environment in which it was formed. So the rover makes sense if it can find evidence of rocks that formed in water and the ones that preserve the evidence for organics, which happens to be the chemical building blocks of life. The Perseverance rover will store all of these samples for other future missions to bring samples to Earth. This will be the very first time samples of another planet could be brought back to Earth for us to learn about the deep mysteries that lie hidden deep inside the red planet. Once the robots have explored the red planet with all the samples with NASA, the agency will then be happy to send more astronauts to the red planet. NASA is also researching new kinds of homes where these astronauts would be able to stay on Mars. Scientists are also extensively researching on how people living in space can grow plants for food. This means that NASA still needs to do a lot of work to put humans on the red planet, but there is one other company whose main goal is to actually colonize Mars. Yes, we're talking about Elon Musk's SpaceX, and maybe NASA in the future could team up with SpaceX to get humans onto the red planet, which could change the course of humanity forever. Space debris might be the price we have to pay for all the explorations that we do as of now, but with reusable rockets by SpaceX, things can get to a whole new level, and that one thing might crack the code for space travel and also fix the issue of space junk.